Hello.
What's up?
What's up, man? Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. It's our second second recording of the week. That's that's nice.
Yeah, I knew it was a riff session when I got onto Zoom because we're both wearing hats.
Yeah. Yeah. We're definitely more relaxed. T-shirts and hats,
T-shirts
which
and hats,
is,
yeah.
believe it or not, we dress up for our guests. Like that's a real thing. I feel like I
To a
make an
certain
effort.
extent, I at least like half the time will try to make sure that my hair's done or that I'm wearing something presentable. Even if it's a t-shirt, it's like it's a nice t-shirt.
I can I be honest with you?
Mm-hmm.
I have been wearing my hats less in a work context on Zoom because I joined a Zoom and it was with a sales opportunity. And the reaction when I joined the call was this person was like, "Oh, you're wearing a hat," and I was
They called
like,
you out.
"Yeah," called me out, and then was like, "Oh no, it's a really cool hat." Yada yada yada, and then told me a story about how his boss responded to someone wearing a hat and like after the meeting made the comment, yeah, it's just not really professional, is it? And it kind of got in my head. So since then,
You're like, now I'm not
it's
professional.
it's since then I have like been making a point of not wearing hats so much for like, in certain meetings, which we could probably have a whole episode about that.
Yeah, for sure. Were you the one that made the comment the other week? Like you noticed my hair was longer or something?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I commented, but I have noticed your hair is longer, and I quite it. I like it. I
Thank
like
you.
this look.
Yeah, I made the decision this week that I'm gonna grow it out. So I think maybe like must have been a year and a half, 2 years ago. About two
Uh
years
huh.
ago, I decided to grow it out and have like that full flow. And
Oh yeah.
then it started getting long. And then I was like, you know what, I'm gonna cut it. But I think I'm fully committing. I think I'm not gonna cut it until like, I don't know, April, May. So we'll see what
But
happens.
but what does that mean? Like you're not gonna. So
I'm
okay, you're
I'm
gonna let it grow till April or May with no haircuts.
I'll go in for some grooming.
Okay. Okay. You're gonna get
Yeah,
it cleaned up,
I'll
but
get
you're
it
gonna
cleaned
let it
up.
grow as long as it can.
Exactly. Yeah. So this will be a process. So these next
Okay.
couple of months, while I'm in that awkward phase, I'll be wearing a lot of hats.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay. We probably talked way too long about hats and hair right there, but yeah. Welcome to another one-on-one Stephen Daniel show.
Yeah.
um,
Looking forward to it.
yeah.
These are
So
the fun
we
ones.
I know. I think it's been a couple months since we did it. But every time that we do, I really enjoy it. And it's nice just reflecting on our past episodes. But before we do that, actually, I forgot we haven't even done good news stories. So let's
Ooh,
do good news
how could
stories
you
first.
forget?
I
How could
know,
you
I
forget?
know, it's a sin.
Well, I'll go first. So my good news is personal good news, and that is that we we had taken a break. We hadn't My partner and I, Sarah, we hadn't booked any trips, like made really any commitments after our last wedding of the year, which was our seventh wedding. And we just made plans to work remotely in LA for a week and a half, which is awesome news. Like I'm really looking forward to it.
Got to tell my boy Nebel what's up.
We for sure. He's top of my list. That's
A
a
friend of,
friend of
of,
ours,
of the modern
David.
people leader.
Yes, big time. Big time.
um,
So that's my good
yeah,
news.
this one's tough for me. So I'm gonna have probably what
Well,
sounds like a
to
very
be fair,
strange.
it's hard to have good news because we just recorded an episode. So
That's true.
it's a
That's
tight
true.
turnaround. It's a tight turnaround.
Yeah, so yesterday or a few days ago, I on a whim decided that I wanted to go and get a massage. So I like to get deep tissue massages. I'm a pretty active guy and my legs get really tight. And I was lucky enough to find an appointment for this morning and I went in and it was great. I think like
Ooh.
perfect way to kick off my Friday. So Probably a little different than most of my good news stories, but nonetheless,
That is good
it was a good
news.
time.
Wellness. You gotta prioritize your wellness. It's important.
Yeah, I agree. So back to what I almost jumped the gun and got into before good news stories. Um, I always enjoy whenever we have these episodes and reflect on the last few months. You know, we have so many great guests on here, and I think sometimes we can just, get stuck in the habit of record, 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 and not really take the time to do a deep dive in what we've learned. So for me personally, I feel like this is a good way for us to learn, right? It's like, what have guests been telling us the last few months? What was really meaningful? Are there any themes? Uh, which episodes should our listeners go check out again if they're trying to figure something out? And there are so
Well,
many ideas and thoughts that are shared with us. We have
yeah.
people sharing, their outlines to their books that they're working on, sharing their playbooks that they're putting out. So I just feel like there's a lot of value that's hidden or not so hidden in these episodes, and I think it's good for us to just reflect and talk about some of those findings.
Yeah, I mean there's just so much good knowledge and information in every episode. And to our audience, if you guys have not registered or subscribed rather to our newsletter, you should. In the early days, we didn't even have a newsletter. We were just having cool conversations. But for the last few months, we've had a newsletter, and the point of the newsletter is to boil it down to like what are the key takeaways. And so for those that aren't subscribed, you are probably in a similar boat to kind of how Daniel and I were recording these. It feels like nonstop, and it can be hard to like really get down to, what are the real takeaways from these episodes. And so if you want to get that kind of access, you should subscribe to the newsletter and get kind of the key takeaways. But I agree. I think these episodes are always a lot of fun to reflect. And some of these things actually take time for me to like fully grasp exactly what
Yeah,
the knowledge that's being dropped on us. I have to digest it and really wrap my head around it because some of it's just really progressive.
I 100% agree. And I think that's the perfect segue into talking about, some of our recent guests. So we had John Foster on, four-time
Okay.
CHRO, founder of Gamut Labs. And a lot of the stuff he's talking about is very progressive, and the material is dense, right? Like the outline he shared with us, there's a lot of information in there. And, you know, on the first listen or the first time hearing it, it took me a while to really grasp what he was saying. And the more and more I look at that episode or look at the takeaways, I'm like, okay, I get it. Like it's starting to make, like, not that it didn't make sense to me whenever he was on the show, but um like you said, it takes a little while for it to sink in and to really understand what they were saying.
And so what were some of the key things that struck you looking back at the episode with John Foster?
Yeah, so I think, for human-centered organizations, which is this term that he's come up with versus a traditional organization. When I first heard human-centered, I thought, oh, it means like being really nice to your people, giving them perks, giving them 4-day work weeks, letting them work from home. And I think, part of it is that, like, just being decent to your people and providing flexibility and putting trust in them. But it's not about giving them hugs. It's about giving them the conditions they need to thrive and really perform at their best. And the one thing that he kept coming back to was creativity. Like, if you want to get creative output from your people, then you need to be human centered. So that really stuck out to me. Was there anything from that episode that stuck out to you?
Yeah, I think so. I read a lot of history books, and I listen on Audible. The majority of the time I spend on Audible's actually embarrassingly these lecture series. So it's like college courses, the great college courses that have been recorded, and they all seem to be like the history of mankind related, or a lot of
Yeah.
them are. And so for me, what one of the things that jumped out just because it's such a different way of looking at things. And that's one of the things I think that's what I appreciate most about John and the way that he's looking at a lot of these people problems and these, the uncertainty of where things are going. He's looking at these things differently. And, it was a comment around um traditional organization, the construct of a traditional organization being viewed, in the future as just like a blip in time. Like
Yeah,
we
yeah.
did it this
Crack in
way.
the sidewalk of
Uh,
humanity.
yes, that's what it was. That's
Yeah,
what it was.
yeah,
And I just love that quote. And I love the notion that like someday we're going to look back and we're going to be like, can you believe we were doing it that way? And
yeah.
and what he is suggesting is rooted in the history of mankind.
Mhm.
And immediately what came up for me was I forget what book or what lecture series I was listening to, but essentially there was a period of time where humans were hunters and gatherers, and then they developed these mega cities that were like these huge like centers where people would gather during their hunting and gathering. And then eventually cities, there were more and more cities. There were like not only these mega cities, but then there were like these smaller micro cities or towns. And and then in a matter of like 200 years, because of the way, there's no written record, people essentially forgot that they used to be hunters and gatherers, that the urban way of life just became the thing. And again, it's this notion as like a crack in the sidewalk of humanity. Like people are like just going to forget, like, oh yeah, we used to like drive into a physical building to do work. Like that just seems so archaic. um I just love that thought. That's like the number one thing that jumped out at me when looking back at the episode.
Yeah, I also like how he explained the difference between a traditional and a human-centered organization. So, he talked about how with traditional organizations, you have a business or a product and, you know, or sorry, you have like a product and the entire business or the entire organization is built around that product. But with a human-centered organization, it's all it all goes back to the behaviors that you're looking to get out of people. So the way that he put it was it starts with your customers, right? So you're
Mm.
talking to your customers and you're understanding the behaviors that they're looking for to solve their problems. And then as an organization, it's like, how do I set my people up for success and build the right systems and structures so that they can be creative and solve these problems and exhibit the behaviors that customers are looking for. So like it starts with the customer as the human, and then once you understand the customer, then it's like, all right, how do we understand our humans here at our company and what they're going to need to solve as creatively as possible the problems that they're attacking.
Yeah.
And
I
then
Go ahead.
no,
Go
I was
ahead.
going to say another thing that just jumped out in my head. He also talked a lot about language and how machine language has been used a lot in the workplace setting and it's just become commonplace. And I find myself catching myself, when I'm talking, when I'm in a meeting or I'm giving a presentation or I'm just talking with friends. It's so easy to use that machine language because we've been programmed to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I that is another thing that really resonated with me as well. It's the more and more I think about this human-centered approach in this human-centered design,
It starts with the language and how you talk about it.
the more I realize how not human-centered that, even when we use the word human, like human resources, like that feels mechanic. And I don't know, it doesn't feel like a be human type of way of describing, people interacting with other people to create, right? To create value, which is to me what we're really trying to do at the end of the day. It's reducing the human element, or kind of marginalizing the humaneness of it all. And so I think that that also really resonated with me. And just to continue, just while we're on a roll here, I think the definition of a modern people leader, also like the words that he used to describe modern people leader, like most of our guests had a like almost competencies, like a modern people, displays these qualities: resiliency, and what the way John described, the definition of a modern people leader was, it just was more, it was a more involved response. And that goes back to what I really appreciated about the conversation is, that the words matter, that the context also matters as well. Like even in our follow-up posts, our clips with, the snippets from his episode, I like how John has gone back and was like, yeah, well, this quote derived from this article or this saying or this other quote, is just really, really cool. I love the thought that John is putting into, all of the things he's contributing, to HR, to the people space right now.
I also liked the analogy that he gave. Um, he's like, for somebody with celiac disease, if they have uh, a gluten intolerance and they just have a little bit of gluten in the food they're eating, it triggers that intolerance. And he compared it to hierarchical thinking. I know I butchered that word right there, but
It's
it's
a
so
hard one.
true. Yeah, I mean, a thing that he talked about a lot was how traditional organizations are very paternalistic, and yeah, just a little bit of hierarchical thinking can ruin any people process. I think the example he gave in another podcast that I heard him on was performance management,
Hmm.
and it's so true. Like, I don't know, I feel like everybody's had an experience where they were mandated to do something without really being given a proper explanation for why,
Right.
and immediately there's like this resistance, right? There's this reaction that you have where you're like, that's dumb. Like, why are we doing that? Even if it's not dumb, but because it's not being properly explained and justified, that's your reaction.
Well, and I think that that is really relevant right now. I think that
Exactly.
it undermines a lot of trust. And I think the performance review is a perfect example. Like I read an article about how Goldman Sachs, and sorry, Goldman, I love I love the firm, but there's just a lot of news, and it's easy to find. Um, but there was, the article was essentially explaining how Goldman was bringing back their performance review process after years of having a continuous feedback approach, and how there's feedback that, you know that this is essentially just a process to justify laying people off. And that, to me, that reaction, like, this could be very practical. Like, hey, we're going into tough times. We need to go to kind of, we got to go back to some of the traditional things we were doing, because that's the best way we know how to work through these difficult times. It's like, if that is shared, then I feel like there's a little more legitimacy. But the second that, it feels hierarchical, or it feels like we're reverting back to a control based way of working, employees are now immediately going the immediate response, I feel, is one of mistrust, not trusting, and wanting to push back, and not cooperate with said hierarchical process. And so that, to me, and another example is, we were talking about a friend of ours who is working in their job, like they're in their busy season right now, and they do have a hybrid working arrangement, but not now. And because they need to get through this busy period, yada, yada, yada. And it feels like it's incongruent with the rules, right? The
Yeah.
handbook, the policies, when, the handbook says I can work remotely, 2 days a week, but my manager's telling me I have to be in, and is being passive aggressive and, just plain aggressive at
Mhm.
times about me being in the office. Like, those are the things. This is where like language matters. The words you use matter. And it's going to be interesting to see, how painful the next 18 months are. Cause I think with all the whipsawing back and forth, like, I don't know how I would use the right words if I were a manager. Like, in the scenario, I have a superior who's telling me I have to do these things. And like, we've just been all over the place with our messaging. Like, I just would find that to be a very difficult situation.
Yeah, and I think the words used by their manager were, um, they wanted people in the office because they wanted them to all be available. And that just sounds like control. They just
That
want,
doesn't even make sense. Yeah.
yeah.
They
It's like,
employees have been available. That's implying that people are not available if they're not in the office. And we clearly have been available because we've been working this
yeah.
way.
And before we move on to talking about some of the other episodes, another thought came to mind when we asked John for examples of human-centered organizations. He named the NFL, which quite frankly, I was surprised. Like I know they've been in
Me
the news for
too.
some pretty bad reasons, but
Yeah.
the reasons that he gave, and I think he probably meant professional athletes.
Right.
So even the NBA, they have all sorts of data on their players, on their health. They're helping them with massage therapy. They're making sure that they're eating the right things. They're making sure that they're getting enough sleep. They're making sure that if they have mental health issues, that they're seeing a therapist or getting prescribed something that can help them. Uh, and it just made me think of what a human-centered organization looks like in the future and all of the different ways that they could potentially be touching your lives. And I see a lot of posts from people, leaders out there that are really proud about the work that they're doing on the mental health front, on the coaching front. They're partnering with companies like, I think Modern Health is one that I'm seeing a lot. There's
Mm-hmm.
companies like Torch, there's BetterUp that does like
Yeah.
mentoring and
Coaching.
coaching.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, we're already seeing uh, people, getting the support they need, whether for mental health or for their careers, by being connected with coaches. I wonder what the next evolution looks like. What part of our lives are they gonna our organizations gonna feel responsible to help their employees with in the future? Like I think it would have been looked at as very taboo 10, 15 years ago to think that companies were that concerned about their employees' mental health. Not to say that they weren't, but it just wasn't talked about as much.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I am not, I know I should remember his name just because I also follow basketball, but I can't. But it was the former Spurs player. I feel like he was one of the pioneers with like time management. Now a Clipper, Leonard, Wahi
Oh,
Leonard,
Kawhi Leonard.
right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like he was a pioneer for some of these changes in that he was like, look, I have my career literally is finite. There's only a certain number of
Well,
years,
Tom Brady.
and I should be managing, I don't want to play because I'm injured, and you're asking me to play when I'm not fully healed, and the professionals are telling me that I'm not fully recovered yet. And so
I
I
forgot about that. That's right. Because with the Spurs, they forced him to play, but then he went to the Clipper, or sorry, he went to the Raptors, and they sat him every 3 or 4 games, and they ended up winning the championship
they were
because
like,
they were able
fine,
to. Yeah,
that makes sense. We get it.
yeah,
And you're an expensive asset. You're an important asset and a costly one at that. And so we'll try this out. And they won a championship.
yeah.
And so to your point though, of like, where will that line be drawn? Like, how far will it go? What is the responsibility? These are all great questions. And I feel it's hard to like see, to really see forward and understand like where it could go. Because back then, these requests that were being made seemed so outrageous, right? We're so rooted in the way things are today and the rules that have been imposed upon us that it's hard to like reorient your mind and think, okay, well, how really should it be? And so looking back, it's like for those that are championing these things, like keep doing what you're doing because it makes complete sense. And I think I we were all like, and I don't want to get too far off track here, but we are, our society is rooted in a capitalistic society that's all about, the dollar bill, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show how much we've been, programmed to operate in this system when we don't even think and challenge, like, wait a second, is this really the right thing that we should be doing? It might be profitable, but is it really for the shareholders? That might be a great thing to do, but is this really the right thing we should be doing?
Yeah. Agreed. So we we still have so much to talk about. So I'm gonna keep us going. So
Okay.
um let's talk about the episode with Merary.
Ooh, that was another good one.
Yeah, and I can get us started. This isn't really something that she dove too deep into, but I think that really resonated with a lot of people whenever we shared it on social. And it was her advice to any first time head of HR. She said, study the governance of your company and figure out who your CEO is accountable to. Everything else will fall into place. And I just wanted to repeat that in case anybody missed that episode or they didn't see that on LinkedIn. But I just feel like it's great advice.
What a baller way of looking at it. Sorry, Mariah, if I'm being too informal about it, but that is a complete compliment because I don't think I have to guess that most people that are first time in this role are trying to figure out what is important to the CEO and want to deliver on those things that are important to the CEO. And Merari was like, "No, you need to understand, who is holding your CEO accountable and what they're holding them accountable for." And that then your agenda should fall into place. That is just like an amazing and awesome way to look at it.
Yeah. And then another thing she talked about was separating DEI from HR and how that creates more accountability. And I'm sort of like drawing parallels between what she said and what Kim Rower said on our last episode, which I forgot. It hasn't published yet while me and Steven are recording, but by the time this goes out, it will have. But she almost said the same thing for employee experience. It's like if
Mm.
you can not necessarily separate it out from HR, but if you can make it its own thing and have a person or a team completely dedicated to employee experience, then you're going to have a far better employee experience because it creates more accountability.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also there's a lot of bureaucracy in HR departments and HR functions. And I think a lot of it is rooted in these hierarchical, kind of what we were just talking about. And if you really want to make change, you have to be able to not get, um, you don't want the HR policies and procedures and just the operating model to stifle what you're trying to accomplish from a DEI perspective or what the really ambitious goals that you have from an employee experience perspective. And this is more so for larger organizations for sure. But I think that to me is one of the key reasons. Another key reason why you want to separate these things. And let me give you an example. So, someone very close to me works in HR. I'm going to keep them anonymous just because of what I'm sharing. But one of their executives has is exposed to a program that is a talent management program deployed by human resources and loves it. And it's like, oh man, this is such an amazing program. I think we should share some of the information we get from this program to our with our employees, like on the employee hub. And that way we can, see how we can better work together. And when that request so this executive, C-level executive, starts like, putting in motion, the things that need to happen for, this information to be shared on their employee hub. Um, it is flagged as something that hasn't gone through the normal HR channels, and immediately HR begins to put in kind of, not, I don't want to say roadblocks, but the process and procedures that need to be followed in order for something like this to happen. And I think that is like a core negative image of human resources in general. Like, human resources is just getting in the way, is going to stifle things. It's hard to enact change. And so when you have these functions that are really, really important, like strategic strategic level of importance, there is a huge risk that it can get stifled. And that's just unfortunately a function of how a lot of HR organizations are operating. And so I think by breaking it out, it's smart because you're allowing it to operate on its own, almost like a little startup.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of something else that John said on his episode, that traditional organizations play not to lose versus human-centered
Yes.
organizations are playing to win. And I feel like HR falls into this trap far too often.
Yes, thank you. That yes, that essentially sums up what I was just trying to say. And man, what a bummer to everyone involved, especially for an initiative like DEI, where you're going to get underrepresented groups involved. Maybe you're creating employee resource groups, and yeah, for it to just eventually be a play to lose type of situation, that is a
Yeah.
great way to disengage your people.
And it also reminds me of something Jackson Lynch said on the show when he was talking about HR competing for budget within the company. How
Mhm.
rather than thinking about like how they could knock it out of the park and the range of success that they could have, there's more focus on what could go wrong and what this potentially could cost our company, which I think
Yeah.
is also important to consider. But again, it's playing not to lose versus
Yeah.
playing to win.
Yeah, and it just reeks of a function that hasn't had that strategic level of interaction and pitching and business case building. For me, just because I know we're now we still have a lot to cover. Um, for me, it wasn't anything that specific, although there were some specifics that I'll call out, with Merari's conversation that really jump out at me. For me, it was I I love our high tech guests, right? The people leaders that are, chief people officers or CHROs at high tech companies. But I also really love hearing how different the perspective is for those that work at more established companies. And with Merari at CVC Partners, that is a global organization managing billions, if not trillions of dollars in assets. And the reach through their portfolio companies, what was it? Hundreds of thousands of employees that are being touched globally. And just to hear like her perspective and the things that she was sharing, not only about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but just about how she operates as a head of HR. It was I enjoyed hearing kind of that different perspective, that different lens of the larger organization.
Yeah, and then just also hearing the diversity in her job on a day to day, how, one of her portfolio companies could be, I don't know, a more traditional company versus another company in the portfolio could be like a, high flying startup or something. So she's getting to talk, and also like geographical differences, right? So
Yes.
some companies have more of a global footprint versus just here in North America. So that changes how they look at DEI. And it's something we also talked about with Kim Rower.
Yep.
Yeah, like when you go into some of these other countries, it's not legal to track some of the same metrics, and that poses a challenge. But it also seems like an interesting challenge to try to solve.
Yeah, and not only is it it could it be illegal, but it could be unsafe for the
Yeah.
employees in these countries disclosing their sexual orientation, which is it was kind of mind boggling. But it also goes to show how complex the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging work is, and how far we still have to go globally, right? Because it's like you
Yeah.
think about it when you start to think about it, and I try not to think about it for too long because I start to get, a little like bummed or panicky feeling about it all. But if we have like just looking at one particular country feels challenging enough, but then with what Kim shared, like, when you look at all the global countries and all the differences and all the different dimensions of diversity, what you can look at, what you can't, what's legal, what's not. It just goes to show that there's a lot of work still to be done.
Yeah. Yeah. And one last thing before we move on, but she said something else that I really liked, and it was, I'm not interested in flashy DEI.
Mm.
So I'm not interested in disclosing DEI metrics publicly for the sake of doing it publicly to be splashy. It's all a case by case basis depending on the company and what's best for the company. And I thought that was also interesting to hear.
Yeah, the framework that she shared with us, the 4 pillars, I thought was also really, really cool. It was attracting, developing, retaining, and monitoring.
Hmm.
And I think that, I just like the pillar approach. Maybe it's because of the organizations that I worked with really had this pillar focus. But, not only are those the pillars for CBC partners, but then those are also, it gives like a beginning, a starting point framework for their portfolio companies whom she's also consulting with, which is, one of the points that you added. Just seems like a really cool job.
Yeah. And one thing we didn't even touch on the episode with her, but just looking at those 4 pillars, it mirrors the employee life cycle almost.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I believe that too often uh companies are looking at metrics at one specific phase of this life cycle, either, and typically it's hiring, right? Are we hiring, are we getting more diverse? Are we hiring more women? Are we hiring more other underrepresented groups, blacks, Hispanics, Latinx, whatever it may be, and they're just looking at that particular lens. And so I like the notion of like following the entire employee life cycle and understanding like what are the key metrics at each of the phases.
Agreed. So let's talk about the group episode. So we had 2 group episodes actually. So we can, if we have time, we'll talk about both of them. But let's first talk about episode 75, Gen Z's impact on the way we work. I got a text from my little brother who happens to be a Gen Zer. He was like, I had to admit I don't listen to that many NPL episodes, but I've listened to the group episodes and I really enjoyed it, and I especially enjoyed the Gen Z episode.
It's good
Um,
feedback.
yeah, I mean, it was a stacked lineup with Laura, Steve, and Stephanie. Um, to put you on the spot, do you remember if there was anything where, you know, as you were sitting there listening to our guests, you're like, oh, that was really smart.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think that what in the conversation, the it as it was being explained, it was like, oh yeah, that that makes a lot of sense. Is the comment, and I forget who made the comment, but that Gen Z will only, is much more entrepreneurial, and could be the most entrepreneurial generation yet. And the fact that there is going to be less patience with Gen Zers dealing with kind of BS in corporate jobs because they will be very quick to take the entrepreneurial jump and pursue a more meaningful or interesting type of experience or experience that will give them the opportunity to get exposed to more growth or more things at a company. And I see that being a, we've talked to, a lot about the great resignation. And we may find out that what we thought was like a little blip or like a little event in response to a bigger global situation with the pandemic, we might find that that's just like the new way things are. That the shelf life of an employee is 2 years, and if you're lucky, and what we may see is that it's actually a lot shorter than any of us actually thought, because you're going to have 6 months to prove to a Gen Z or to an employee. I won't call out the generation, because I think once the other generations see that they also have some power, that they jump on board as well. And so we can't put this all on Gen Z, but that, yeah, you have 6 months, and I don't care if my resume looks weird because I didn't stay for 2 years or a year. Like, the value of the other experience that I can get is worth way more than having this, this
Yeah.
believing in this old belief that, you got to protect your resume. Like, that's just BS.
Yeah, and I think what you're hitting on, so, um, we talked about how Gen Z is the most entrepreneurial generation yet, and something else that was said on the episode, I think Steve Cadigan said this, but he was saying people want a wide variety of experiences. They want different bosses, they want different projects, they want to work in different departments. So I don't know if that's just like having better internal mobility. I don't know if it's like having like more rotational programs for people entering the workforce, but somehow stimulating that entrepreneurial side of them that wants to, you know, uh, learn new things, try new things, bring more creativity to their roles versus just working on spreadsheets or I don't know, whatever it is that they're doing that maybe they don't feel like they're getting that mental stimulation.
Well, yeah, and I don't think I totally understood how different middle school and high school is, and what kids are being taught, how kids are learning today, how different it is to back in the olden days when I was in middle school and high school in the late 80s and early 90s. And, I'll just use my 12-year-old daughter Astrid. She's taking web communication. She's 12, so she's in 7th grade. She's taking web communication, engineering. Of course, she's taking, history and English literature. She's also taking digital art. And so in her day,
She's already learning all these digital skills. That's amazing.
yeah, not only that, but she's also getting exposed to a lot of different things. And, it wasn't that way. It was just like your standard subjects. And year after year, you are just repeating the standard subjects. Maybe you go into AP in advance, maybe you take some electives. But generally speaking, I feel like when I was in middle school and high school, it was pretty cookie cutter year over year, where like semester by semester, things are changing dramatically. And kids are being exposed to a lot of different things. And so then you go to college and there's more of that. And then you get to the workplace and it's like, nope, you're just going to have one job. You're going to update this spreadsheet. You're going to generate a
Mhm.
report and you're going to email it to your manager, and you're going to repeat that every month or every week. And that is, I now better understand like the the repulsion from that kind of environment, just because of, being now better understanding how our youth are coming up, how they're being educated and how they're learning and what they're
Yeah.
being exposed to.
Yeah. I remember when we had Sarah Salbu Young on the show. I'm probably gonna butcher this quote, but it was something to the effect of people would like to experience work like they experience high school. It's like you every semester you're getting to take, 6 or 7 different classes. So you're constantly learning new things, being exposed to new ideas, having different teachers as like your mentors. There's different students or classmates that you're getting to go to class with every semester. And yeah, I don't remember the context of what she was sharing that with, but yeah, I mean, I don't know
And
how workplaces or companies create that environment for people, but it sounds enticing.
yeah, and here's the thing, and this is what I love about the way that and the way and the volume at which Steve Cadigan and others are are making these points, because the pace at which the world is changing is extremely fast, and it feels like it's accelerating. However, the pace at which the workplace is changing is not keeping up, and it's like this growing disconnect, and you see all these various signs of the this bigger problem happening. This in Steve has branded it this work quake, this work quake. And and I and I love the words that he's choosing, because it feels like there is going to be a point where this like all kind of blows up and it's no longer sustainable. And I think that is, my belief is like we're in the early stages of that. But I agree. I think that for now, more reasons that I previously understood, I think we're going to have to provide those sorts of opportunities, or you're going to see your attrition rates continue to be really, really high, or your turnover
Mhm.
rates really, really high. And those that are smart are gonna understand that they need to find a different way of providing opportunities, a more agile way. And we're already seeing companies who are challenging all the assumptions of working, and they're going to start to get ahead, and they're going to have that first mover advantage. They're going to have, and they will see higher retention rates. They will see the ability to hire, time to fill rates, all the traditional recruiting metrics. But another thing that popped up for me in that group episode wasn't only about the entrepreneurial aspect, but it was the contractor point, the gig economy point about
I had a feeling you were gonna
many,
bring this up.
yeah, many people. And you know how like I'm a big fan about Upwork and tools like that, but the fact that more talent will go independent than ever before. And so, the example was that Canva is giving people the option to join either full time or as a contractor. Like I again, this is something that I would not have agreed with. I wouldn't have been able to see that this trend was happening. Well, I guess, and I've seen it over the last few years as a CEO and having to change my own our talent strategy. But we get exposed to kind of trends like this, the things that the great companies like Canva are doing, it's pretty mind blowing for me.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I think we're coming up on an hour. So I want to quickly just talk about the other group episode that we had because there were so many great takeaways from that episode as well. And that was with Valerie Jackson from Zora, Darren Murph, and Hallie Bregman. And I'm looking at my notes from that call, and again, like some of the ideas that were talked about, um, they would drastically change how we think of work. And the one that really pops out to me is people are rethinking their purpose portfolio. So
Yeah.
Darren was saying how
Damn it, you took mine. That was going to be my one as well. I've used I can't remember who he took it from, but the purpose portfolio is the biggest takeaway from that session
yeah,
for me.
yeah, how everyone has a purpose portfolio and work is just one stock or equity in that portfolio. And if you only invest in work, then your portfolio is going to be overweight, and people are realizing that they really need to invest in other areas. So he doesn't he doesn't see it as any surprise that terms like quiet quitting are popping up, and you know uh people aren't too happy about these return to office mandates that are being put into place because it's taking away from their purpose portfolio. And it again, it goes back to what we were talking about with John, that the tension that we feel is the institutional power that is shifted away from the entity into the people. And people just aren't ready to, they're never going to relinquish that power. And they're realizing at the end of the day, they're more than their work. They're more than just Daniel, the demand gen marketer, or Steven, the CEO. Pretty cool title if you were going to wrap your identity into it, but but yeah, you get the point.
Yeah. I and you know, it to kind of circle it all to come full circle, this is exactly what John was talking about in the response to the hierarchical organizations. And so, yeah, I think that, I won't go back into that, but the concept of a purpose portfolio and the empowerment of like of that realization, like, oh, work is just one factor in all these other dimensions that are really really important to me as an individual, and I can choose where I want to spend my time. I can choose to either work more, you know crank it up in some points of my life, but also to dial it back. um and I think that is just way different to how I was raised. I was raised like, you're going to work hard, and that's just what you're going to do. And good things will happen if you work. But that kind of mentality comes with a lot of unintended consequences, you know, missed opportunities, personal opportunities, um, having to let, not investing in relationships, in your personal relationships. And when we think about wellness, mental well-being, and having the things in your life that are bringing you joy and happiness, for me, the purpose portfolio is just a very practical way of looking at it, and figuring out, okay, how do I right size this, and how do I get the balance that I need? Because it's not, 20 years ago, if we had a conversation like this, it would be called work life balance. And the reality is, that it should be that is too limiting. It should be broader than just work and life. There are all of these other things that bring purpose to individuals.
Yeah, yeah. And I one last takeaway that I wanted to hit on before we move to our one word close. So we were talking about hybrid work and its impact on DEI. So I feel like we should definitely talk about this. But there are positive signs in the DEI data. So, according to Valerie, who's the chief diversity officer at Zora, there have been positive signs. She admits that it's still early days in the new world of work, but she says that belonging, psychological safety, inclusion, and some of the other DEI metrics are all up. With that said, she made sure to emphasize that just because it's working now doesn't mean it's going to work in 18 months. And it's really important for leaders to stay nimble and agile and keep looking at what you know to be important. Stay open to what the measurements are telling you, and stay open to new solutions, and then sort of like rinse and repeat that process.
Yeah, I agree. I have a lot of questions, a lot of follow-up questions that we didn't have the time, nor was it really the forum to kind of dig into those. But I think that the fact that belonging, psychological safety, include that these things are being discussed and that they're being measured at all. There, people are even thinking about measuring these different factors is a positive sign in itself. Um, for me, what I think about is who are the companies that are really sincere about these things, and which are the companies that it's just lip service, that they are just, it's easy to jump on a bandwagon. And it's like the joke, like, oh, so for Pride Month, you're just going to change your logo. You're going to create a rainbow logo, and that means that you're really supportive of the community. Like, and so for me, I think it's going to be interesting to see how the next couple years play out, given all the focus and attention these topics have gotten, and to see, like, okay, are we making progress? And in
So
particular, the companies that are stepping up, are they really putting the money where their mouth is?
so it's like performative DEI versus real DEI.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All
Wow.
right. So
We
we
didn't even, this is literally like half of what we wanted to
I
talk about
know.
today.
I
And I
know.
think we're out of time.
Should we save that for the next one?
I think so. I think this is a
Yeah.
perfect like part two. We've done a few part one, part two. riff episodes, but I think this should be a follow-on part two because there are some current topics that I wanted to get into today.
I think that just speaks to how much we've been able to learn from our guests and the quality of guests that we've been lucky enough to have on our show. Like
I've said
we
it
we could have
multiple
we didn't
times
even
to
touch
you.
on like half of the notes that we had in here. Like we just, you know, pick and chose a few of these, but we could have talked about this for another hour just from those
Yeah,
episodes.
and I just want to, I think it's a good time to be thankful and grateful for all of the guests that joined us for the episodes that we just talked about and for those that we haven't talked about. I've mentioned this to you a few times over the last week that it's just amazing and awesome, and that we set out to have some fun conversations. Like the bar was really low when we started doing this, and to think that now we're at a point where someone like John Foster is like, "Hey, I want to share this manuscript with you, and I want you to read it and give me feedback, and I want to talk about some of these concepts." Like the fact that we people are sharing playbooks with us, and like all of this, just it really I'm grateful, and I am constantly learning. I wish I could pick up all these concepts and these nuggets and understand them more quickly.
Me too. But I think that's part of change. Like, the first time that the internet was explained to somebody or that Google was explained to somebody, I'm sure they were like, wait, what? So you go online and type something in and you can find whatever you're looking for. Like it almost seemed like too good to be true.
They're
And
like, "Isn't that Yahoo?"
nah, Doug. um yeah, I
It's
guess did
better.
Yahoo come first?
Yahoo came first, yeah.
Yeah.
But Google, the minute that Google came around and you didn't get a bunch of garbage with your searches,
Yeah.
it people never went back.
Yeah.
It was a done deal.
Yeah. So let's do one word closes. And I'll go first. I'm gonna
Ooh,
say you got this. So, we from some of the off the record conversations that we're having with people out there, it feels like the overwhelming sentiment is that um like this is a hard job and it's lonely, you know, from both like the really experienced HR leaders to the not as experienced. It feels like everyone is sort of exhausted. There's been constant change, over the last few years. That's not going to stop. It's going to keep happening the next few years. Everyone's trying to figure it out. Whether it's the biggest company in the world or the smallest company in the world. So hang in there. You got this.
wow, wow. And I'm gonna go with similar. My one word close is gonna be community. And the reason I'm saying that because it's crazy that you mentioned that you chose that as your one word close. Um, I literally had a call today with a former, well, a modern people leader guest, very senior leader, and who's been through a lot. Companies exited, $1 billion exit, and we just talked for 45 minutes about and I listened to the challenges and the burnout and the frustration and the headaches, and we were both just so grateful that we could share with each other and have a chat, and we agreed to schedule a bi-weekly catch up so that we can just like talk and listen. No expectations other than that. No additional modern people leader guest requests, just like a one-on-one chat. And I don't think we would have that kind of conversation if this community, this modern people leader community, didn't exist. So for those out there, like, reach out if you need a chat. We're here. Come join us on the show. Come talk to us individually. But yeah, community.
Yeah, we want to hear from y'all. So you can reach out to either of us on LinkedIn, add us, message us. We like meeting as
Please.
many MPL listeners as we can. So yeah, I feel like that's the perfect way to end this episode. And now I'm gonna go enjoy some Italian food tonight. I have the in-laws in
Oof.
town, so we're hitting all the spots. Italian food tonight. We're getting brunch tomorrow, getting steak
Oof.
tomorrow night. So I'm about to be eating good this weekend.
This is the time of year that people come to Austin and want to move here because the weather's perfect, it's sunny, it's beautiful, it's not 105 degrees sweating outside. So yeah, I'm gonna do the same. I'm gonna try to get out and enjoy this beautiful weather. So
Awesome, man. Well, great chat, and have a good weekend, man.
you too, you too. We'll talk soon.
All right. Bye.
All right, bye.